Hi everyone, this is Brens from Games Tasker. This is my top 10 worst games in gaming history which I've actually played. If you guys like the video, make sure you hit that subscribe button below, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Coming in at number 10 is Double Dragon on the Game Boy. I am a Double Dragon fan, but I wasn't a fan of handhelds back in the 90s, and this game just confirmed my opinions. The biggest mistake on this game was to port the arcade version rather than the NES version. It's much slower than it was on the NES, and the Double Dragon on NES wasn't a fast-paced game to begin with. Making the game run slower than the original was a poor way to circumvent the resolution problem that would otherwise prevent you from seeing what's coming towards you. This makes the overall experience feel really weird. Jumping characters stay in the air for what seems like an eternity, and your punches and kicks can't be chained as fast as your instincts would expect from a real fight. Jumping in the game was a massive issue and awkward to pull off, using the A and B buttons at the same time like the NES version. Every time you die, you have to start from the beginning of the level, which is not a big deal in the end of level 1, but can become frustrating in the later stages, especially considering this game had no save feature or continue. An outright frustrating game for me back in the day, being a fan of the series, and that's why it made my top 10. Coming in at number 9 is Turok Evolution on the original Xbox. This title was one I was really looking forward to on release, but it just didn't live up to my expectations. The graphics were poor, just reminded me of Nintendo 64, disappointing to say the least, especially when some mountains and trees would literally just disappear from the screen whilst playing. Then we move on to the sound quality of the game. The voices were really bad, or muffled and crackly. Unpopular opinion, but I found the dinosaur noises to be also boring and terrible. Gameplay was mediocre. More weapons would have been nice, especially considering you don't get the half-decent weapons till later in the game. I stuck with just a club and bow and arrow. Some may find this game making my top 10 worst games a bit strange. I just didn't enjoy the gaming experience at all. That's repetitive. We'll give it one bonus point for cover art, but that's about it. Coming in at number 8 is the Simpsons Wrestling on the PlayStation 1. Terrible. The graphics were bad. Even for 2001, the gameplay was even worse. It felt like the game had been created by someone who had heard about wrestling due to its popularity at the time. I hadn't watched more than a few clips or 5 minutes of WWE wrestling on Sky Sports. Simpsons Wrestling simply wasn't up to scratch when held to the standards of a wrestling game or a fighting game, so it might well deserve the unwanted award of being the worst in both genres. Everyone has the same moves and animation. The game slows down with more than 2 people on the screen, and you can literally win matches in less than a minute. The sound is atrocious, with badly dubbed voiceovers from the series, and the background music is almost non-existent. The voices from the series are there and sound just terrible. This game was a massive, massive disappointment. Number 7, Ecco the Dolphin on the Sega. This was one of my most eagerly anticipated releases growing up, seen as a competitor to Sonic and to show us a new dimension in 60. What a diabolical piece of gaming history. This game was unbearably hard at times, and what you seemed to be trying to do was almost pointless. Looking back now, I can honestly say Ecco was incredibly dark, unsettling, and depressing. Constantly worrying about drowning, the scream of pain from Ecco when he took damage, and the immense sense of loneliness. Who thought this was a good idea for a game? I can remember aimlessly spending hours on the first level swimming and just shouting at seashells. Just not a really good, memorable gaming experience for me growing up. I found the game really hard and it frustrated the life out of me. That's why it makes me the top 10. Should I call it my bottom 10? Coming in at number 6, WWF Raw on the original Xbox. Raw is by far the worst wrestling game I've ever played. The only thing that I enjoyed was the ability to create your own entrance by altering the lights and adding pyro and stuff. Graphics were okay, but none of the wrestlers looked like their real life counterparts. Every superstar walks weird and it's actually quite funny to watch. The wrestlers move slow and the response is slow to when you tell the computer to pull the move. There's no commentary in the game, which is a huge letdown. Lack of match options is also disappointing. The challenge mode was boring. Where was the hardcore matches, the tables matches, the submission matches? Nothing. The game is just boring. Raw was a huge disappointment on the Xbox, and a joke to the wrestling and gaming fans. Nothing from the counter. This wrestling game left me feeling cheated and deflated. Heading over to play Here Comes the Pain on the PS2 just confirmed that idea wipes the floor this time. Coming in at number 5, Transformers the game on the PlayStation 2. Having grown up on the Transformers cartoon and films, I eagerly anticipated this title on the PS2. Making a trip to my local Blockbuster, I actually bought the Transformers game and raced home. What a disaster. A complete cluttered mess from just walking past buildings to these exploding and just falling apart. I found myself wondering what I was doing. I just couldn't get into the game and I felt disappointed from start to finish. From a title you'd expect so much from, it just failed to deliver. Running around a limited open world whilst flipping and chucking cars was just boring, and the game had a severe lack of content. Many glitches, terrible camera problems, just really left me feeling cheated, and it was returned to Blockbuster quicker than I took it out. But I am still a massive fan of Bumblebee, although not a fan of Transformers the game on PlayStation 2. Chopping its way to number 4, Shaq Fu on the Super Nintendo. Having just been told this game was amazing, a little naive Brens swapped Super Mario World for what I was expecting to be the next Street Fighter. Wrong. Shaq was a global superstar, and who would have thought he'd take over the gaming world in Shaq Fu? I guess nobody now. The game was crazy, the characters Shaq had to battle were just bizarre. Why didn't he ever question his hero mission? Gameplay was shoddy, and if you ever just need a button bashing game to let off some steam, Shaq Fu is the game for you. Combos were just a non-entity. Sometimes you'd hit one and end up wondering how you did it. I honestly think whoever they were creating this game were just high and having a laugh. It's a dreadful fighter game with no sense of controls and laugh out loud visuals. Let it be known, Dad got little Bren his Mario cartridge back about an hour later. Shaq Fu, terrible. Smashing his way into number 3 is Hulk on the PlayStation 2. Buying this game with the Transformers scene earlier was a great idea at the time, with the emphasis of what should have been a really enjoyable beat-em-up experience. This may come as a surprise to many, but I hated this game. In my opinion, it looked terrible and played horrendously. The depth of the game was lazy, and the clap attack was cheesy. The story mode in the Hulk clocks in at well under 10 hours. The sheer simplicity of the gameplay leaves you pleased that it didn't go on any longer. This game should be fun, and I know it has its fans, but it just left a bitter pill in my mouth. Even the Hulk smash mode was boring. Being a huge fan of Marvel and its characters, it's another title that left me feeling underwhelmed. It may be harsh me chucking this in at 3, but that's how it left me feeling. It definitely won't smash its way into any other list for me apart from being the most disappointing. I know it will cause controversy, so why don't you let me know how you feel about the Hulk on the PlayStation 2 in the comment section below. Rising all the way to number 2 is the seriously bad Rise of the Robots on the Super Nintendo. Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Rise of the Robots, stop. Don't ever put the latter in the same category. The advertising campaign and hype around this game had us all chomping at the bit and badgering our parents for the money to buy the best video game ever made, and even featured on Games Master. Honestly, I cannot express how bad this game is. The controls were just non-existent. Fighting fresh air was amazing in Rise of the Robots. This game is generally the worst fighting game I've ever played in my life. But one positive comes to mind: it's slow, horribly programmed, and doesn't even have one interesting move to pull off. It's frustrating and completely and utterly boring. Being overpaid excessively in 1994, you couldn't even give this game away, and it's famed for being one of the worst games of all time. That moniker is completely deserved because it's complete and utter beep. Flying in at number 1 is Superman 64 on the Nintendo 64. I don't think I've ever met anyone who enjoyed this piece of garbage, and still to this day I find it insulting that they released this title and ask people to pay circa £35 for the privilege. Horrible controls, frame rates that you would expect on an Atari 2600, and more bugs than what would be found in a tramp's vest. I mean, how many rings you have to fly through? It's boring, monotonous. In fact, it gives me rage just talking about it. This game was never finished. It was produced and rushed out onto the shop floors for a quick dollar to be made. It's almost as if this was the first edit, something to be built on, but the powers that be just looked and shouted, sell, sell, sell. Superman 64 is terrible, really bad, and I would be very surprised if it didn't make everyone's top 10 of the worst games of all time. If you're intrigued to think, I want to play it, I'm pleading with you, please don't. It's absolutely beep. Well, there you have it. That's Brens' top 10 worst games in gaming history which I've actually played. Do you guys agree? Let us know in that comment section below. And while you're at it, would you, could you, hit that subscribe. See you on the next one.
I love that sound.